basically what they were saying is that the United States is a free-for-all because there's no leadership and we're all at war with each other. There's this thing that we had once called the Civil War, and 700,000 people died. Young men, white men mostly. There was an African-American contingent in there, but it was very small. But most of it was white men. Went and fought and died. So we could have this thing called Juneteenth, the freeing of the slaves. And the president then, Abraham Lincoln, whose statues were pulled down, and so was Frederick Douglass, who was a slave that freed himself. But he worked to free other slaves. That means he was working with America. And because he was working with America, they pulled down his statue. I don't know why they pulled down. Of course, Lincoln was working with America too. And they really should have been Marxists, but Marx wasn't born yet. And communism wasn't born yet. But nonetheless, they pulled their statues down. But anyway, so like 700,000 people died. And it's interesting that we are the only country in the world that went to war to stop slavery. Isn't that interesting? See, in Africa, they have wars in Africa all the time. One tribe goes against the other tribe. The winning tribe takes the other tribe, the entire thing, as slaves. And when the slave trade started, basically it started in 1,400 years ago. The trade started, except they were going to Arabia, not transatlantic. They were going to Arabia. But right from the beginning, Africa, this has been happening for thousands and thousands. Since the beginning, basically, their own people. We go to war. But you see, when you see tribes, this tribe is different than this tribe, they don't look at color of the skin. They just look at you're the enemy or because you're a different tribe. And if we win, you're weaker. And we take you all as slaves and we hold you for the rest of your life, including all your children for the rest of their lives as slaves. And the funny thing is, it's not really funny, is that there are more slaves today than there were when America had slavery. But you see, the South was going against Thomas Jefferson. He's the one who said, no more slavery. We're not bringing over any more slaves. And we'll give you 20 years to end it. And he knew that, you see, the Democrats in the South that owned those slaves, it was the Democrats. You see, Republican didn't start until Abraham Lincoln. And the party was started to abolish slavery. Yes, it's not a lie, it's true. Democrats. So he basically was telling the Democrats of the South, you better get rid of slavery in 20 years because it doesn't belong. See, I wrote this Constitution and Declaration of Independence and Bill of Rights, and nothing about this, nor the book that I hear read every week at church, is completely against slavery, at least the New Testament, the Jesus part. And so he was against it and wanted to end it. He had slaves, but in that world, letting them go because the other slave owners didn't want to let them go. There was a chance that they could get hurt or killed. And he knew that world. And it's interesting because it did come to pass after the slaves were free. You had a thing called the KKK, which was also the Democrats, because they enacted Jim Crow laws. And they went out and they terrorized anyone who was a former slave, or anyone who was against the Democrat Party, or anyone who was a Republican. Even if you were white, they hung you. You see, that's the interesting part about all this. But America is the only country that went to war, that shed blood. Evil white people, which is totally non-scientific, because it depends. You're white depending on where your ancestors lived in proximity to the sun. That's all it is. It doesn't make anyone good or bad. But these white men laid down and died. They're blown up. Their arms were blown off. They would cut their limbs off so they wouldn't get gangrene while they were awake because there was no anesthetics. It was the most horrific war probably ever fought. And for some reason, they think the Democrats keep saying that America is the most racist country in the world, when the slaves that are being held are not in America. And they're usually not in white Christian countries, not the Western world, because it's illegal in the Western world. And we have more slaves now than we never have been. But it's even more now because, the people coming to the border, the women and children are being caught. And mostly men are coming over because they're being sold into slavery by the drug cartels. So that open border, you can thank this Joe Biden guy and this Vice President Kamala Harris, who supposedly is not white, for letting that happen. So, happy June 19th. I'll get on with this whole Putin thing in the next video. But can you imagine how many things were burned down and how many things were destroyed? They were destroying this nation during the Civil War because the Democrats did want to get rid of their slaves. And Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, that's what the party was formed for, said enough. That's why we don't have a democracy, we have a republic. If we had a democracy, if most of the people in this country wanted slavery, then we would have it. A republic gives voice to the minority. You would think, why isn't that Democrat? Of course it's not. The Democrats are the party of slavery and Jim Crow and KKK. A republic, that's why each state is like its own state, its own country, little country. That's why. That's why when Trump said, to stop the burning of these cities, they didn't, because the governor is like the president of that state, and they have a say. They have a say. Anyway, happy June 19th. And thank you to all the people that died in the Civil War. So we could declare that slavery was over with. Thank you to every young boy. It would take them as young as 15 to fight in these hard wars, but they did it. because the president said so. And then the South did it. Here comes the truck. Must be a Democrat. The South did it. Interesting, because the South, not one vote for Abraham Lincoln. The one who was elected president came from the South. You should find that interesting. So that would mean more votes went to Abraham Lincoln, people who didn't want slavery anymore. The states that wanted slavery didn't vote for him at all. 100%, 0 votes. So that means the majority of America, and you see the flag, the American flag, which everybody hates, that flag actually represented, that flag wanted the slaves free. The South had the Confederate flag. That was the flag of slavery, because that was the flag of the southern states. And that lost. The flag that won was the flag that wanted no slavery. So that flag is really the flag of Juneteenth. It is. And it's sad that we want to take it down, destroy it. That was the flag of freeing the slaves. I've had a long day. I knew there was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yes, something about, here's another thing for you, about how powerful the northern states were. Because if you were a slave in the southern states and you ran to the north, or you went through the Underground Railroad, if you went to the north, they knew if they got to the north, they wouldn't be sold out. They were free. They were totally free. And that was the majority of America, because Abraham Lincoln never would have won. And Abraham Lincoln, interesting to note, Stephen Douglas was the guy he ran against. Stephen Douglas was a Democrat, ran against him, and he represented slavery, the southern states. And in those days, there was no TV and no radio. So if you wanted to know what happened during a debate, you read the newspaper, right? So you could read the whole debate in the newspaper. And you know what, in that debate, Stephen Douglas said to Abraham Lincoln? He said, "Behold, your first Africano president." Why did he say that? He's a relation of Elvis Presley. Everybody knows Elvis Presley is white. Because Abraham Lincoln was a Melungeon. So was Elvis. A Melungeon is, they had 2 different kinds of it. See, if the master of the plantation wanted to go and rape one of his female slaves, and she got pregnant, that child was a slave. If a white woman had an affair, because it was different. She wasn't the master. She wasn't the head of anything. But there were love matches that did happen in those days. And unfortunately, in the South, you couldn't marry someone if they were of a different race. And Italians are the same thing. They were considered black. They also couldn't marry whites. Southern Italians, the Northern Italians sold them out. But that's another story. But they went through Jim Crow, and they suffered the same because they were considered black. Anyway, so there was a child born, but of a white woman. That child, even though that child is half black and half are African American and, well, half black, because then they weren't citizens yet, and half white. They were free. They were considered free if you were born of a white woman and the father was a slave. The child was born free. So those people had no place and had no community. So they went to the hills. And after that, they would also intermarry with Native Americans. So a Melungeon is a combination of usually Scottish for some reason, Scottish, African slave, and Native American. Because, see, Abraham Lincoln, they say, a classic Melungeon has blue eyes and has dark skin, usually a ruddy complexion, curly dark hair. That's usually this. But you see, Stephen Douglas knew he was mixed race. So when he said that, all the newspapers in the country wrote down that he was an Africano. That's what they called them. That somebody who was not white was Africano. He didn't mention the whole Native American thing, but behold, you see. And everybody read this. And what's interesting, and so everybody in the South said, oh no, we're not going to vote for an Africano as a president. And the people in the North read that and said, hell yeah, we can have someone who's from Africa, Native American, as a president. So let's put that in the pot and stir it. How racist was America? You think it would have been more racist back then, not after we elected for 2 terms the first African American president. You'd think, my God, there's hardly any. But all of a sudden, after 2 terms of the first African American president, where no racists went to the polls in huge numbers to try to vote, that not make sure he wasn't elected or vote him out of office. Somehow that didn't happen. All of a sudden, Donald Trump runs for president. All of a sudden, people just become racist. They just become racist. Anyway, I'm going to add something else in the pot. Stirring this up again. Texas used to belong to Mexico. And Mexico invited people to pioneer, because Americans had the pioneer spirit, to come to Texas. And they had to become Mexican, one thing. And then 2, they had to become Catholic. And so they said, sure. And because they had the pioneer spirit, they thought they would go there and they would basically build it up, build housing, businesses, create a state like the other states. Except when they got there, the Mexicans said, the Mexican emperor said, we want to keep this frontier land. We just want you to live on it and shoot and kill the Comanche Native Americans and the other Native Americans who want to move to Texas. This is our land. We're Mexican. This is our land. And we don't want any Native Americans living on it. And that also they went to war with other Native Americans in Mexico twice because they wanted to be free, the Native Americans. And then they kept going down to Central America because they went to war with every country and they wanted to take Central America and South America. But we're told that the Americans have that manifest destiny spirit that it's all ours. But the Mexicans. Okay, but that's the Mexicans then, not the Mexicans now, the different people. So you have to think to yourself, okay. Texas went to war with Mexico. and broke away and became their own country. They wanted to join the United States because the laws and the freedom was great. But the northern states, the states that voted for Abraham Lincoln, didn't want Texas into the Union because it would expand the slave states. The North did not want to expand the slave states. They did want to give more power to the slave states because the entire North, the North voted for Abraham Lincoln, and not one vote came from the South, which means the majority of Americans did not want slavery and wanted the slaves to be free and equal, as it says in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and in that wonderful the New Testament, at least, because the New Testament, Jesus and all that stuff. And they heard that every week. They knew it was wrong. So the majority of America who flew the American, got it in the kitchen, it's in the kitchen, little mini American flag, who flew the American flag as we know it today, because now we have an African American flag and then we have the American flag. That's the flag that wanted freedom for everybody and did not want the slave states expanded and wanted slavery to end. That was the flag that wanted it. The people who were under that flag wanted that. The people who wanted slavery were under the Confederate flag. They were all Democrats. Yes, they were Democrats. KKK, Jim Crow South. So 10 years. So this whole manifest destiny of taking up all the lands we possibly could, baloney. 10 years America waited to allow Texas into the Union. 10 years. Okay. So put that all into the pot and spin it around. And I'll talk more about this Putin guy. This Putin guy who basically talked through the whole G7 summit, and this Joe Biden guy who wrote the 1994 crime bill. It was friends with all those segregationalists and KKK members. He died in 2011, Robert Byrd. But he was a senator for the Democrat Party right to the end and has his statue in the Capitol Rotunda. You think that's the statue that would have been pulled down, but it wasn't. Well, anyway, this is for Juneteenth. Okay, so I'll go on about the G7 summit in the next videos. Goodbye, everybody, and thank you for watching me in black and white. Bye-bye, and happy Juneteenth, because anybody in the North and anybody who is not a Democrat is really happy about that day. If you're a Democrat, you should study the history of the Democrat Party. Study the truth. Wonder why everybody read that Abraham Lincoln was not white, in fact was part African. And the majority of Americans voted for him. 100% in the North. The people who wanted the American flag. The American flag as we know it today. And loved the Star-Spangled Banner. That's not about racism either. It's about that flag surviving, being bombed all night. That flag of freedom, not the flag of the Confederates and the racist Democrats. The flag of freedom survives. So you need to know your history. You really do. Because everything's being destroyed in America is going to be no more because people don't know their history. But come to Felina and I'll teach you. Thanks for stopping by. Good night and God bless you.
Mr. Sandman.